So, about a week and a half ago, my local game store held the first ever Buddy Battle tournament, which is a 2v2 One Piece event. And if you're like us, then you probably know that One Piece has been getting a little stale recently. So, we were super excited to experience the game in a whole different way. And from this tournament, we actually learned quite a few things. We ended up going 4-0. I was playing Boatbeard, aka Whitebeard, and my teammate here was playing Blue Purple Croc. Before I go any further, I know who you are. Some of you may know who you are, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Ortiz. I was playing Blurple Croc this weekend with Ashby, playing Boatbeard, and I think that we had probably one of the strongest combos that this game has ever seen. And through that, we were able to go undefeated and get that dub.
Exactly. So some of you may know him from the Discord. Others of you may refer to him as the guy who doesn't post enough on the Patreon. That's my personal favorite. But in this situation, he was the guy who almost gave me a hernia from being a hard carry. Essentially, how the tournament worked out was I was driving the boat and I had him on the back in an inner tube, and he was just getting free wins because I'm just the best of all time for a reason. I'm the boat, you know? That's why I had to pull out the boat. But I was super excited for this event because, as you guys may know, Blue Purple Crocodile is one of my favorite decks of all time. It's actually the deck I started out with, and we came up with a strategy that is arguably completely unfair, and I would almost say that there needs to be some kind of ban or errata for Blue Purple Croc in the 2v2 format, and we'll get a little bit into that, but I wanted to share this strategy with you guys so that you understand how to take down your next Buddy Battle event, and if you go to a major event, just so you can steal the Nami sleeves from the other people.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm going to go ahead and break down how Buddy Battle works, and then we're going to take you through our matchups, and then we're going to talk about what worked, how we did it, and what we think are also some viable strategies. So essentially, the way Buddy Battle works is, it's not like a normal 3v3 team event. It's not like a 2v2 team event. Basically, we're all conducting the same match. So on each team, you have an A and a B. So if I'm player A and I win the die roll and get to go first, their player A will go after me. Then after that person, it will pass back over to Ortiz, and then it will pass back over to their second teammate. In addition to this, each player starts with -2 life from their starting life total. So for our example, I should have had 6, but I started with 4, and because he was playing a 4 life leader, he started with 2. Now, the win condition works when both players on a team are at 0 life, and you hit another one of those players for 1 damage after they're both at 0. And this really synergized with our core strategy because essentially in Boatbeard, they're never attacking my leader because I'm always adding the cards to my hand anyway. And one of the fundamental flaws of Blue Purple Crocodile is that it's really difficult to establish any form of character presence. If you saw my most recent Blue Purple Crocodile, the central strategy was to get your 7-cost Crocodile on the board and your Queen, and the way you can put those cards on the board so you can start pushing for damage is by gaining incremental advantage. Now, that all sounds nice, but the biggest problem is removal is so good in standard One Piece that if you take a couple turns to be able to play out one of those cards, the other guy can easily just use a jet pistol, and now you have to start over and try to regenerate that advantage. But in 2v2, it allowed us to take a completely different approach. Essentially, he never even really focused on developing his characters. The only time he ever even summoned a character was when he would summon Queen, and the other person immediately jet pistoled.
I was jet pistoled 7 times in this tournament, exclusively all of them on my Queen. Queen is the best bait card in this deck. Everyone wants to get rid of it because it's kind of a menace, but in reality, they should be trying to get rid of the Boatbeard's characters because I just will never die. We were constantly just using his hand and my hand to just protect my life total, and I stayed at 2 for most of my games. The only times that we even got close was during our second to last match, and that's because they got really lucky with their multiple Whitebeards. And even then, we just came back from it, no problem.
The match where we almost lost, one guy had a Shanks and a Whitebeard, and the other guy had an 8-drop Captain Kidd, and we still won. In all the other matches, we had him at 1 life, and I was always at 0, and you gotta think, we took up the entire time. So in Buddy Battle, I forgot to mention, you actually start with additional time because there is 4 people going. So I think it was like 10 minutes plus the normal time, and we went into time like, I think 3 out of the 4 matches?
3 out of 4.
Something like that. And that wasn't even really due to us. It was just the other people thinking about what they're doing because we understood what we're going to do.
Okay, it is Ortiz's turn. What will he do now? He is going to summon a queen, attach 1 to his leader, and have his 2 remaining Dawn. I will now swing at your opponent for 6, and then I pass. It goes to player 2A. They're going to swing at me. They're going to try to kill me because there's no reason in trying to kill him because he's just playing Boatbeard. He's naturally at 0. They can't kill him unless they kill me first. So then they swing at me, and I use my Thunder Bagua, arguably the most broken card in all of Buddy Battle. Just because for the sheer fact, I'm constantly at 2 life, and we also get that free Dawn just because it's just broken.
Exactly. So as you're going to notice in this video, there are some core fundamental cards that just make sense in Buddy Battle, and you should probably be playing a deck that utilizes them if you're actually trying to be competitive. And I would say that they're kind of separated from the rest. Now, Thunder Bagua is one of those as well, and it added to the overpoweredness of these 2 strategies. And another thing, some people may be thinking that like the bow is getting banned, that this is not going to be nearly as powerful. I'll be honest, the bow doesn't really change how unfair this strategy is.
We did not get bow for 2 of our matches, and those were our easiest matches.
Yeah, but the bow is unfair in the regard that you got to think, in normal Boatbeard, people don't like it in set 2 because they say you live and die by the top 15 cards of your deck, i.e. your starting 5, the 5 you will draw, and the 6 that you will draw in life, or whatever, 16 cards, whatever you want to call it. And that's somewhat true, but you got to think, I can just sit at 0 forever. The limitation of Buddy Battle, of everyone starting with -2 life, that doesn't really inhibit me. It doesn't really matter. And essentially, since they're always attacking him, he doesn't have to spend any Dawn on developing a character because I'm filling like the sword role and he's filling the shield role. It was completely unfair because you got to think, since he's able to stall out infinitely, I can just wait until it doesn't matter. I'll only looked at the top 15 cards in my deck. He just stalled out for 10 plus turns. So now I'm basically guaranteed to get boat. Like, you don't need boat to win, but the fact that you can just wait until you get boat is what's broken.
I can't believe we forgot to mention this, but it's the most broken thing about Blue Purple Croc in Buddy Battle, and that's the fact that if you activate an event during each of your opponent's turns, you get to draw during each of them, which is so insane. The amount of card advantage we accrued was absolutely absurd. There was points where I just had 8+ cards in my hands with over 10k counter just for free. And then you have Love Mellow as well, drawing you 2 cards. I drew 4 cards before the start of my turn.
That's true. That's really unfair. And you also have to consider the fact that, like, the Thunder Bagua, remember how he was mentioning how unfair that was? So since he's starting in 2 life, he can essentially turn 1 Thunder Bagua, and in this scenario, since there's always a player A and a player B, no matter if we win or lose the die roll, he is always confirmed to go first, and I'm always confirmed to go second. Now, that really aligns well with Thunder Bagua, because essentially, the best play in the Blue Purple Crocodile deck is to play Queen on turn 3. So if he uses Thunder Bagua on turn 2, he can attach 1 Dawn to his leader to get the draw, and in addition to that, he's rampant. So what happens is, when he gets to turn 3, he's going to be at 6 Dawn. And you may not think at first glance that that's unfair, but essentially what it allows him to do is play his queen, and now he's not behind a Dawn, which is one of the deficiencies of Blue Purple Crocodile, is you have to put that card out and then you get behind, so if the guy removes it, you're just in a negative position. But not only that, he has one Dawn to attach to his leader, and that's very important for one of the most powerful cards in the deck, Gum Gum Rain.
Gum Gum Rain was absolutely insane this tournament. Definitely an MVP overall. I just feel that Gum Gum Rain on turn 3 like that was absolutely absurd. It just allowed me to draw plus counter out of so many situations. It literally just allowed me to force my opponent's hand. Because even if they were trying to kill his Whitebeard stuff on that turn, which would be at its weakest point, even then I could just protect it. I had so much counter in my hand early game just because of that single ability. And mind you, I was only playing 2 because we only had 2. The consistency, if we had a 4, would be absolutely absurd. I can only imagine getting a hand where you have multiple Thunder Bagwas in there and literally just getting up to 10 Dawn insanely quickly.
100%. And I mean, you guys can use these deck lists, but what I will say is we came to the consensus that we would essentially remove all of his characters in the deck. Besides, essentially, we would keep the queens, and we would probably keep the 7-cost Croc just because it's a name.
The Baroque work stuff.
It has a counter. You can search it, so that's important. But he never really played that card, and we thought the law would be good because you can always target one of the 2 people. But the problem is, it just turns out he never wants to play any of the characters.
Honestly, the only time I ever played with a character was either the Miss All Sunday, which was the MVP of the deck, or the Queen, which was also an MVP of the deck. All the other stuff in your deck is realistically just counter. There is no reason why you should ever be summoning a Mr. Galdino or your Croc. It's just like, oh, free 1k. I got it off my searcher. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Plus a draw.
You might want to summon Mr. Galdino. It's only 2 Dawn. You can negate an attack. That might come up.
Well, it didn't come up for us.
Yeah, it almost came up.
We were discussing it in the middle of the game. It was just better overall for just me to keep that Dawn open, just in case I did draw into another event, which would be absolutely absurd.
I agree with what you're saying. I think one of the most important aspects of Mr. Galdino is it's probably like the next best name that you can play. The reason I have the deck the way it is so that you have a base chance to hit off your Baroque Work search card, because I think when you're able to use that card to draw during your own turn,
oh yeah,
I think that's very important.
I absolutely love the Baroque Work Searcher. It was definitely very, very good because you just got that search in the 2k most of the times.
Yes, so you got to think about it like this. If he was able to use the Baroque Work search card during his turn and then use an event during our opponent's turn A and our opponent's turn B, he is drawing 3 cards in addition to his normal draws. And then on top of that, all of those were negating an attack. The match takes 50 or 60 minutes, however much time was available, and the other team only did 1 successful damage. And almost every team had 1 red player.
They were all just attacking me constantly. There was points in time, they would just have literally every single character on board just tapped because they just swung at me and they couldn't have done a thing. I just kept drawing and drawing during both of their turns, managed to discard anything because if I couldn't block it, then he could. Because he just had so many cards in hand as well because he's just playing Whitebeard.
Yes, and I want to bring this up. So we had a lot of suboptimal cards in the Blue Purple Crocodile deck because we thought that it would be good to play the law. We thought it would be good to just put out characters in general. And it turns out he doesn't want to do that at all. So going forward, you got to understand, we literally single-handedly won this tournament so easily. And we had so many cards in the deck that were not correct. So if you were playing this deck completely optimally, I don't think the other team has a chance to win because multiple of the games, we had a terrible start, and we still were guaranteed to win. You think about how RNG this game is, being in a best of 1. This deck and this combination mitigates all of that, and if you play perfectly, I don't see how you can lose with a fully optimized deck.
Oh, absolutely. I just think that the ability for the ultimate defense and the ultimate offense to just combine like that with Boat and Croc is just absolutely absurd.
And since they were always using their pistol on his queen, it was essentially just allowing me to develop my board for free. And even if you don't have Boat, the Whitebeard bodies are just very high value. They're difficult to get rid of because I have a very good late game. And another thing you got to consider, I like that you mentioned that they attacked with all 5 of their characters and you mitigated that, because one of the reasons I wanted to play Whitebeard is because I thought Ace would be one of the highest value cards in this format, and I was exactly correct.
Oh, yes. Ace was one of the most insane cards that we got. I mean, every time he saw it, it was just an instant play. Because that rush plus that minus 3k, you just got to kill 2 things on board, confirmed.
Since there's 2 people, it's just a guaranteed hit on play. I'm going to go ahead and take you guys through the matchups that we saw. So starting in round 1, we went against a red-green Luffy, and we also went against a Smoker. So this matchup was the first matchup of the tournament, and so we were kind of like feeling things out. It was probably a lot closer than it should have been, but to be fair, I didn't draw Boat, and we were kind of learning how the interactions worked because we kind of knew a couple things like the Thunder Bagua. We knew how powerful Gum Gum Rain was and how powerful it was to like have him draw a card during both opponents' turn, but we didn't really fully understand how much advantage that generated him. And you know, the red-green guy, he had the film stuff, so he was able to like generate value. And since I didn't start with Boat, it was like somewhat of like a disadvantage for us because we had to start out like waiting for me to draw resources to answer his value engines before we could start like pushing for damage. And this is before we understood like we just need to have him just be completely defense.
See, I feel like the biggest mistake I made during that game as well was definitely summoning a 7-drop Croc. Honestly, that set me back in tempo so much when I could have just honestly have kept that Dawn open, hoped to draw something off of an event, and probably had a better time with that because he just got instantly killed. Even though we messed up and I wasn't like playing optimally and he didn't see the Boat, the fact that we were able to come out on top even after all that was pretty crazy.
For real, because honestly, that was one of my poorest hands all day. I didn't see a ace until like turn 15 plus, and I basically had all vanillas. There wasn't much I could do, and I had no Boat, and we still beat them. Ultimately, it came down to the fact that the Smoker guy, he just has like very little counter in his deck. And after I was able to answer the film Luffy's value engines, it was pretty much wraps because his value engine already exceeds the card advantage that's being generated from searchers like Bonnie and Nami. So once that was out of the way, he's just going to snowball out of control because we can literally sit there for 20 turns, especially if the other team doesn't know what they're doing, and just generate an excessive amount of value to where we have to take no risks. So that game, it was very easy, and it was probably some of the poorest hands all day. In game 2, we went against our friend who was, you know, kind of still learning the game. He was playing Zoro, and we got him a teammate there who was a pretty skillful guy, probably one of the better players at locals. His teammate was playing Ivankov, and our friend Cyrus, he was playing Zoro. Shout out to Cyrus.
Love Cyrus.
Had to clap that boy up.
Yes, sir. This was probably the scariest matchup we had all day. Just because at one point we were very close to losing, but we didn't because of the sheer fact that you managed to come out on top with that ace, which is just so clutch.
Yeah.
Because at one point the Ivankov player had multiple Ivankovs on board and had a 6-drop Luffy. It was absolutely absurd. 6-drop Luffy was a menace all game. Kept bouncing back Marcos, kept bouncing back. Mostly Marco. And that really sucked. I mean, Ashby putting Marco on board every single turn was really nice, though, because he just forced him to bounce it back.
That was OP.
Yeah, no, that was really strong. I think eventually it just came down to the fact that the Whitebeard player, the Zoro player, Cyrus, just did not manage to draw his Whitebeard or any form of like big boy.
That's facts.
And due to the fact that even though the Ivankov player got really lucky at that end, he managed to get stage, which allowed him to get into Buggy, which allowed him to get it into Ivankov.
he would have beaten us. But essentially what happened was, even though I didn't draw a boat, I had 2 back-to-back ace. Essentially, the first turn I aced, I was able to reduce down his Ivankov and his Luffy. And because the other person is on a lot of agency to attack down the crocodile person, he's constantly tapping his guy. I'm automatically attacking 7 on 4 and then 6 on 4. So I was guaranteed to kill 2 guys anytime I played ace. So having the back-to-back ace is really what just allowed us to chip away advantage. I will mention Ivankov is probably one of the best decks.
Ivankov, yeah, no, Ivankov is definitely, if you want to play something, if you can't have that croc skill, just like I had my coach here coaching me through the croc plays all the time. If you can't have your personal croc coach, I recommend Ivankov. Ivankov was just crazy good.
Yeah, because you got to think, you need to get both people down to 0 in order to win the game. And we were initially attacking the Ivankov person, and my rationality for that was I didn't want to attack the Zoro person because he might draw a Whitebeard, and I don't want to give him a Whitebeard because our decks are gonna have trouble with the Whitebeard, especially against him, because they can just remove our chump blockers, and he's playing 4 Missile Sunday for law, so it's that's really irritating. But in theory, I think that we probably should have attacked the Zoro person first anyway, just because when you're attacking Ivankov, it's almost like a similar game plan to Blue Purple Crocodile in the way that he can just keep discarding down to 0, and he can just protect his health total of 3 for an infinite value if he just keeps drawing cards that have counter, because it's pretty easy to get down to 0 cards, especially if the guy has a stage, because that means every time on his turn he's gonna get to 0.
Yeah, thankfully our opponent did not draw stage though until very, very late. I feel like that was pretty lucky on our side, but overall, if I wasn't to play Blurple Croc, I would have played Ivankov.
I agree. If Blue Purple Crocodile ends up being banned in this format, I would play Ivankov, honestly. Going forward in Game 3, this was our closest match, but at the same time, I had boat in this match. In our third game, we played against a Zoro and a Kinemon. These people honestly high rolled so hard.
They at one point had one of the strongest board states I think I've ever seen. They had 8-drop Kid with multiple blockers. This guy was playing Kinemon, so he had a Yamato at one point, he had Okiku, he had Raizo, he had a value engine going, and it was crazy.
He had a 5-drop law too.
He had a 5-drop law as well. And then the other player had a Whitebeard and a Shanks. So even if we had our small blockers, like I had my Missile Sunday and my 1-drop law, he could just attack and I couldn't block them. Very, very menacing board. But I think it just came down to, once again, ace was so crazy.
Yeah, I think I eventually ended up drawing boat.
Yes.
But it was really, really late.
We had boat about, I believe it was 14 turns.
Like I was mentioning, if you were playing in singles, you would not be able to access boat in that scenario. And you have to consider, if you have boat, a lot of people may be thinking Eustace Kid is a really strong card in this format, because it is. Essentially, both players have to target that character, and you cannot attack either player's leader or either player's characters, and that is really unfair. But if you have boat, it essentially mitigates the value generated by 8 cost, because you're reducing their 8 cost to 6k essentially. So when I played an ace and he was at 9k, I was reducing his guy to 6, and even though he had a law blocker and a killer, I was eventually able to push through over a course of several turns, and since he's drawing a card during each opponent's turn, we were able to protect ourselves and not die before clearing that, and eventually we just got into a game state where I think we just left the red guy with his Shanks and his Whitebeard, and we just pushed for lethal because we felt confident that we could just keep mitigating the damage, because I had a Marco, I think. And
yeah, you had a Marco and a blocker.
And he kept playing blockers because he kept drawing queen, and the other guy would immediately answer it with a jet pistol, which is normally terrible for Croc. But because it's taking up that guy's turn to answer his characters, it's essentially highly beneficial because he doesn't care about that. The guy isn't targeting my stuff. So then when I play boat, I just have all the guys on the board that I have no merit having on the board.
Yep. There was just nothing. It just got to a point where our advantage was just absolutely insane. Between his multiple 6, 7 AK attackers, he was getting numbers in there, and they just had nothing in hand they could use. They didn't have that value engine like we did, so they just ended up fizzling out slowly over time.
True. That was insane. I do want to mention, I don't know which game it was that I used a squad. Maybe
No, that was it was that game. You used a squad on their Zoro.
Maybe I had boat early then.
No, you had boat early game 4.
Okay. Okay, well, essentially, there was a scenario that I thought it was in that game.
Oh, no, it was in that game, because you did have boat early.
Yeah, okay. So, in that game, I lied. I actually did have boat early. I didn't have it immediately, but essentially...
You had it like turn 5.
I had it on like turn 2 or 3. But essentially, in the deck, since you're taking a life every turn, what's so unfair about it is I can be at 1 life within 3 turns, naturally, without anyone attacking me. So my boat is immediately online. And now you have to consider the fact 0 life is no limitation, and there's no deficiencies to me being a 0 because they always have to attack him.
He is essentially an immortal. He will not die until I die.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is, since no one attacked me, I had a boat out on turn 3. So this is how it went. Turn 2, I played a Vista and I killed something. So it goes back to me. This is my 3rd turn, so I've taken 2 life at this point. I'm at 2. My boat is not active, but I have a boat and I have a squad. So I reduce the guy's thing with my squad, then I play my boat. So now I have a turn 3 boat online, and I have 1 Dawn left to use a Seaquake. So now I'm attacking for 5 with my Vista and 8 with my leader on turn 3, which allowed me to clear the entire board, and that interaction was completely broken. That's one of the reasons why I think this combination is just so unfair.
Squad is definitely a 4 of in this meta. Squad just allowed him to basically just kill something while speeding up his game plan. It was absolutely absurd.
Exactly, because in this strategy, in normal boat beard, you kind of want to do this too, but in buddy battle, I'm just looking to increase the speed of the game state developing, because I don't care about going to 0 life immediately. I would just hold 10 plus cards in hand and let him use all of his counters, and we wouldn't use my counters until the end. You got to think about whose counters you want to use to defend stuff, and ultimately, if I have 10 cards in hand, I can use those to get infinite value of my 4-cost Marco, which is another one of the most unfair cards in the deck, because in this format, I'm going to be at 2 life in 2 turns. So it's almost like they can't like cheese kill my Marco for me putting it out early, and that was just insane.
They would have to commit too many resources early in order to get rid of it, and even if they did that, it'd be worth it for us, because that just means they got rid of either a jet pistol on turn 2 or Otama plus Vista.
That's true. So moving on to the final match, we went against a Eustace Kid leader and another Zoro. And this match, I'm not going to lie, we just had the insane God curve. So we won the die roll.
Probably some of the best One Piece I think I've ever fucking seen. It was insane.
Yeah, so basically, we won the die roll, so he got to start first, which is the highest level of benefit for the Blurple Croc player, because going first means that you're going to not be the first person to take a damage, and since we're only protecting him, that's very important. And his curve was 1 drop Law, I think turn 2 Thunder of Agua, and then turn 3 Queen, which is like ideally the most unfair thing.
So my turn 1 was the 1 drop Law. Pass, I think my opponent plays Anami, goes to you, you play boat.
Yep.
Goes to opponent, I think he does something. Comes back to me, I attach 1 to my Croc, and then swing for 6, they 2k, and then I pass. So I have 2 Dawn active. I think they swing, I Thunder Bagua, get that 1 Dawn up, and then he passes back to you. And then you had a Vista plus an Otama.
Yeah, so I just immediately removed something and developed a body for my boat, and then now he just has a Queen online with a leader attach, which is even important if you don't have a Gum Gum Rain, because then you can push for like a confirmed kill, since both people can use counter out of their hands, the additional power actually makes a large difference. And at the same time, you can also hold one up for a Desert Spada because you don't have to attach to your leader every turn.
Desert Spada was one of my favorite cards because that card just lets you see what you're going to draw in the future. And I honestly, at times, would just like not play stuff and then would just have 5 or 6 Dawn just sitting there that I knew what was coming up next on in my deck. I was just able to get love after love. And it was just broken.
So he would actually just pass sometimes. We'd be like, okay, attach 2 to your leader, swing 7 at this character. Okay, pass with 8. And we're going on to this guy's turn. So then he sets up a Desert Spada, or he sets up a Love Beam. Okay, so if you're at 4 cards, one of the most unfair things you can do in Blurplecroc is you play your Love Beam and use the effect of Love to draw first. So you go back to 4. Then you use the leader to draw 1.
I activated Love more than 4 times that game. We managed to get it back multiple times with Miss All Sunday. So that was just really, really broken.
I would say that if our deck was fully optimized and he was just playing max events, it would be even more unfair. And I almost would like to think that if the other team doesn't have a blue purple crocodile, I don't think they can win.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe the Ivankov person, I'm not sure what would pair best with Ivankov, but I think that if you don't have either one of those, there's no question, I don't think you can win. I honestly really like that because, as you may have seen in my recent videos, I've been getting a little bit bored with the fact that, number one, everyone's deck lists are public, so everyone just knows like what's winning immediately. And number two, this game is the exact same as in Japan, and all of the Japanese people and the people in the Asian meta are literally just being so transparent with all of their information. They're like, hey, here's a complete guide to everything you need to know. And in this format, we were essentially able to actually do what I would consider like the first step of innovation in the game. And that just really excited me because that's what I enjoy most about card games, because variance in card games. And this is one of those situations where, yeah, we could have gotten super unlucky, but because we came up with this combination that no one thought about, we essentially mitigated as much as possible. And at a point like this, we're 3 months into the format or something like that, everything's already been solved. It was already solved 4 months ago by the people in Asia, and there's nothing really new that me and him can bring to this final treasure cup. So I really like this event, and I think it's a really good refresher from the normal format. So I would highly encourage you guys to tell your locals about this and get one started, because I think it's super fun, and it just adds like a new layer to the game for combinations, for skill expression, and it just makes a quick refresher when the metas are very long in this game.
I mean, and overall, it's just really, really fun. I think this was some of the most fun I've had in a card game in a long time.
Exactly. So now we're going to finish this off by just talking about what we feel are some of the most powerful cards.
I think at the very minimum, there should be like a Whitebeard, a Ivankov, or Blurplecroc. I think that those are all really good. And one that we didn't really mention is the Kid leader, Kid with Yamato. It's just going to be really, really good, especially if you're expecting a lot more Blurplecroc, because you can just take out their life in one go. It's a lot easier for you to do that with like a Yamato, and the ability to just protect your stuff with your A-Drop Kid, only if you don't have that Whitebeard opponent.
A-Drop Kid is a very unfair card. My problem with it is it takes a long time to set up, and since you're having 2 other people go before your next turn that can attack you, the one deficiency of green is if you lose board in early to mid game, it's difficult to set up your Kid, and it's difficult to come back. So you would have to set up a strategy to where the other person was able to like get that going for you. Before you did that, I'd almost say that it should be blue purple crocodile plus Kid, because then you can just stall out till the green person gets Yamato, and after the boat ban, that might be the way to go. I'm not entirely sure.
I think that Strawbeard will be good post boat ban.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that Ace might be the way to go, though. You can play your 7-drops. 7-drop is just so broken, man.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be Ace, because you think about what Ace does if you're not familiar with it in set 3. Essentially, you get to use 3 different searchers, which almost guarantees that you're going to have 7-drop in your hand by the end of the game while it still has a high impact. And in those scenarios, your ace is just getting so much value like we described. You need someone who's going to do like board presence and a lot of like, damage, be able to trade away characters. And obviously red has the best removal. I mentioned a lot of the big bodies in the Whitebeard deck are the reason why it's so powerful in addition to that removal, but ace might be a little bit better than Whitebeard because you don't lose that life, so they do actually have to attack both players. And with the blue purple crocodile deck, if that's not nerfed, that's even more unfair because then they have to actually attack you. You guys gotta understand, we would go 60 minutes and only 1 damage was taken from his life.
Yep. We were waiting there for our opponents to figure out whether or not they should attack me or him. And it turns out they should have been attacking his characters. So.
Yeah. I mean, but sometimes they couldn't even attack my character because I just wouldn't tap them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There were just turns where he would just have multiple characters, multiple vanillas just played. He'd play 2 4-drops and then just pass. And then what's your opponent going to do against that when they're wasting all their jet pistols on my queens?
Yes, and even whenever they're going to push over his Dawn total, I saved my entire hand. So if they were going to push for a number we couldn't defend, or it didn't make sense for the number of cards he had in hand to get the most value out of his leader, I would just use a Rad Beam. And since you're always going to be at 2 life, Rad Beam is just such an unfair card. I think you need one aggressor, someone who can develop a big board presence, and then you need another person who's just dedicated defense. I think that's the way to go, and I think Whitebeard and Ace is probably like your best line, and also your blue purple crocodile is probably best shield. But on top of that, another reason we didn't mention why this worked is he's dedicated to going first. Going second with Croc is a lot worse because then you're under a lot more pressure, and going second with Boatbeard is obviously just win more. It's unfair. You need a person who's a dedicated going second deck and a person who's dedicated going first. So with the Ivankov deck, everyone knows Ivankov is essentially a die roll deck, and if you don't get to go first, you're probably not going to do well in that tournament. But in this tournament, you're guaranteed to start on odd dawn curve, so that's where it can be good. But in that situation, the Ivankov almost takes the role of the purple croc because you're the defender, so then you need another aggressor. And so that's where I'm like, I'd almost rather just have the purple croc person. I think it's just a little bit better.
It's the ultimate defense and the ultimate offense. I think that there's a clear winning strategy, but there's also other stuff you can play. Blurple Croc and Whitebeard, possibly Ace, is probably going to be the way to go.
Now, this is going to be kind of meta dependent, but I will say the Blurple Kaido is a strong potential leader to use. You're almost guaranteed to ramp, especially if you pair it with someone such as like a Smoker, where their cards can't be KO'd. Maybe something like Black Yellow Big Mom. Since you're going to start at half life, Black Yellow Big Mom could be insane. That ability only triggers at 1 life. You're starting at 2, and you take 1 damage. You can just keep getting value out of that. And that also might be better than Blurple Croc, because that is broken. You can essentially keep adding the top card of your deck to your life.
Oh yeah, I think that's really, really good. They would have to try to kill you in 1 turn. Otherwise, they just couldn't do anything.
Yeah, because you can use that ability at 0 or 1. So
Yep.
that is a potential option. And you got to think when you're doing that, you're getting access to Borsalino, you're getting access to Fukuro, which are cards that can't be KO'd. And that was the big story of the tournament, is that the guy would just pistol away stuff, and you're removing that element from the game, which is mitigating RNG. I would mention that going into this, I thought the format was a little bit faster. I thought you could end the game quickly, because everyone's starting with 2 less life, and that's partially why we had the 6-drop law in there. Turns out, you just can't do that, and because of that, I just don't see how it could be good to play Zoro Leader, because you run out of the resources faster than any other strategy, and at that point, you might as well just play any other red deck that allows you to play the 9-drop. So you could play either Whitebeard, or you could play the Luffy currently, and the next set you could play the Ace. But overall, Zoro definitely is not very good. It's not a deck that has a lot of synergies with other decks. And that's what you got to think about this combo. Our decks have an insane synergy. The Ivankov deck has an insane synergy. So think about those roles of what you're trying to accomplish in the buddy battle format. To wrap this up, make sure to let us know down in the comments what new strategies you guys come up with. I think I pretty much mentioned all the cards, I think are powerful. I think there's Not a lot to it, but there are some things that are still unsolved, and that entices me to keep playing. So I definitely want to hear what you guys are cooking up. Thank you so much for getting this far in the video. As always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.
Peace.
Ooh, is that indigo?